Hey! Billie Eilish released a new song. Eh? What's the title? It's called Therefore I Am. Huh? Sounds familiar. Of course it does. It's from a quote of Rene Descartes. Eh? Who's that? Don't worry. Our classmates are going to report one of his works today. Okay.
Good day everyone. Today we are going to report on Rene Descartes' treatise titled Meditations on First Philosophy. But first, let us take a look on who Rene Descartes is and how he managed to contribute in the field of philosophy. So, Rene Descartes was born on March 31st, 1596 in Descartes, France. He was a mathematician first, a natural philosopher second, and then became a metaphysician. So, he is famous for having made an important connection between geometry and algebra, which allowed for the solving of geometrical problems by way of algebraic equations. So he is also the founder of modern philosophy, as he is regarded as the first natural philosopher because he promoted the development of a new science grounded in observation and experiment. And he is also regarded as the father of analytic geometry, and in fact, his name in Latin is Renatus Cartesius, so you can see that our terminology, Cartesian plane and Cartesian coordinate system, are derived from his name. His most famous work is Meditationes de Prima Philosophia, or in English, it's Meditations on First Philosophy. So, what is this book really all about? It is a philosophical treatise. It was first published in Latin in 1641, but then a French translation was published in 1647 titled as Meditations Metaphysiques. So in this book, Rene Descartes attempts to doubt everything that is possible to doubt. His uncertainty of things, that existence ranges from God to himself. Then he goes on to start proving that things do exist by first proving that he exists. Let's move on to the first meditation, quoted, of the things which may be brought within the sphere of the doubtful. Rene begins his treatise by reflecting on the falsehoods he once assumed were true during his youth. The meditator acknowledges his rash judgments on certain beliefs he once accepted as true, which is reasonable because as a child, our opinions on things that depend on the factors outside our interpersonal self. Our family, environment, childhood experiences, and such. They tend to not have their justifications on their own because common sense and intelligible perception are still foreign factors to us. His goal in this specific book is to devise a strategy that ensures abolishing of these falsehoods that he once believed were true, to rebuild on a new foundation on himself. Given that he has enough knowledge, he would stray from the mixture of his true and false beliefs and only deal with the true or certainty. Let us take a look at the example of the moon. Have you ever once thought that the moon was following you everywhere at night, whether you are taking a walk outside or you're riding in a car as a kid? We usually believed that as a kid, but as we grew up, we learned that it is entirely wrong, and that's where our false beliefs mostly root from. Our naive minds as a child lead us to disbeliefs and wrong perceptions. And moving on to the second paragraph. Here, to attain his goal, he sets aside not only false beliefs but doubtful beliefs as well. So his assent on matters should not only depend on those which he now accepted to be false entirely, but also those that still have a hint of doubtfulness in them. Because a doubt in beliefs is a challenge on its own, and it will just open doors to possible extensive doubtful beliefs that eventually might reject the idea in whole. Let's move on to the third paragraph. Here, he stated senses are deceptive. Descartes states that We should not entirely depend our beliefs on our senses because they are deceptive. It's no denying that we rely too much on our senses, but unfortunately, our senses only show us a very, very limited world. For instance, our eyes perceive only a tiny fraction of our physical existence. We rely on scientific instruments for us to be able to see far away or micro objects, something our naked eyes cannot fully function with. In paragraph 4, here he presents an objection counter on what he said in paragraph 3, and he reasons out that senses might actually be reliable, but as a whole. He states that senses are reliable in its entirety regardless of specific deceptive sensory. So also in this paragraph, he makes a comparison of himself being seated by a fire, possessing hands and his body, and to people who are mentally handicapped, believing that they are king when in fact they're poor, or they're wearing expensive headwear when in reality they have a pumpkin on their heads. He then inquires, how could he be so different from that they are kings and that they wear expensive headwears when they all have head and hands, although they are deceived by their minds. Moving on to paragraph 5, here he said, there is no fine line distinction between a dream experience and real experience. So here he introduces his dreams argument. So he reasons out that when you're dreaming in your sleep, there is no indication within that specific dream that it is in fact a dream and not reality. We can say that there are things in our dreams that also exist in our reality. It just so happens that in most dreams, these things appear unclear. That's why sometimes we have a hard time distinguishing if a dream is really a dream or reality. So let me give an example. Have you ever dreamt once falling from atop of a building? Oftentimes, we wake up in that precise moment that our body is about to land on the ground, and sigh of relief gushes in our body, and we say, panaginip lang pala. And because things like buildings and the familiar feeling of falling exist as well in real life, the dream could in fact be reality when it's just a dream. But if we just consider it in the paradigm of that particular dream only, you cannot say that it's dream from within that dream, because it can be real life. It's just in the matter of when you wake up, you finally realize that it's just a dream. So moving to paragraph 6, he connects that imagination is actually formed through simpler components. He states that things in our dreams are simply painted representations of the things that exist in real life. As I said, buildings and the feeling of falling also exist in real life. He also states that although we imagine our eyes, a head, hands, and a whole body in our dreams, these are not imaginary things, but things that really exist. Also, he actually gave an example that creatures like sirens and satyrs may be extraordinary in nature, but they are still based on animals that exist in real life. So for example, sirens, although they are extraordinary creatures from our imagination, they are drawn from specific things or specific creatures that exist in real life. Sirens from a fish and a woman, and satyrs from a man and a goat or a horse. So moving on to paragraph 7 and 8, he actually stated what those simpler components are, which are extension, shape, and number. From paragraph 6, he draws a conclusion that although he can doubt composite objects, he cannot doubt universal parts from which they are constructed, like shapes, numbers, or extensions. For example, a square is also a four-sided shape in our dreams, and 2 and 3 numbers in our dreams are always equate to 5. They cannot be shifted or changed because they are universal facts. But he actually stated that composite things and simple things are two different aspects that we can differentiate. That studies from composite things being hard sciences, physics, medicine, astronomy, they can be doubtful, but simple things like geometry and arithmetic cannot. Like as I said, counting in dreams is always concrete, like 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They cannot be 3, 4, 5, 2, like that. That's where the argument of composite things versus simple things came from. The next paragraph is 9 to 10, and it states God as an all-powerful being. So Descartes believes that there is an all-powerful God that exists, but at the same time, he also doubts whether God can also be deceitful. What if God made him believe that a square has 4 sides, or God deceived him to believing that a triangle only has 3 sides when in fact it has 4? But he contradicts this by saying that God is supremely good and he does not practice deceiving because it is against his goodness. And also quoted that the less perfect God is, the more imperfect I will be. So in this paragraph, he explained that those who deny the existence of God are just making it out to deceive himself, because, as he quotes, it is clear that the greater will be the probability of my being so imperfect as to deceive myself ever, as is the author to whom they assign my origin the less powerful. On to paragraph 11 and 12, the last paragraphs of Meditations 1. Here, he introduces the skepticism method and the evil God experiment. So, he says that we should not entirely set our opinions aside because they are innate to us and it's already a habit for us to have an opinion on something. But we should resolve it by thinking that everything is false, or to be doubtful, to counterbalance the habitual way of thinking. And he actually sets up a thought experiment. For example, he supposed that there really is an evil God who deceives him and his opinions. So he states that because this evil God is more powerful than him, even if he tries to resist this evil God, he cannot, because the evil God's power is greater than his. But here he utilizes skepticism method. Skepticism method states that to always doubt his assent. So although he cannot counterattack the evil God that deceives him, he can always control what he believes in. He cannot doubt that he doubts. So this phrase leads us to his infamous phrase, I doubt, therefore I think, therefore I am, which we will delve deeper in the second part of this book, which will be reported by my partner, Isa. That's it for Meditations 1, and Isa is going to report now the second part of his treatise.
Second meditation quoted of the nature of the human mind and that it is more easily known than the body. In total, the second meditation has 16 paragraphs, and now let's move on to the first paragraph. Doubts filled his mind. Rene Descartes said that the first meditation filled his mind with so many doubts that it was no longer in his power to forget them. He planned to continue his thought experiment. He also said that for Archimedes to draw the terrestrial globe out of its place and transport it elsewhere, only that one point should be fixed and immovable. In the same way, he should be happy enough to discover one thing only which is certain and indubitable. Second paragraph. Nothing is certain is the only thing that is certain. Rene Descartes said that all things he sees are false. He also said that perhaps nothing can be esteemed as true unless that there is nothing in the world that is certain. Third paragraph. I I exist is necessarily true each time that Rene Descartes pronounces it or that he mentally conceives it. He simply recognizes that he exists as long as he is thinking. This is true even how cunning, deceitful, and powerful the demon is. One cannot fail to be certain that one exists just when one is thinking. And here comes the famous formulation of the cogito, I think, therefore I am. Fourth, fifth, and sixth paragraphs, he tried to understand what he is. Rene Descartes knows that he exists, but what kind of a thing is he? He arrived at two important conclusions here. First, he cannot say that he is a reasonable animal. And second, I am not more than a thing which thinks. That is to say, a mind or a soul, or an understanding, or a reason. He can conceive of himself existing without a body, but cannot conceive of himself existing without thought. Eighth paragraph. He briefly restated his conclusion so far. Rene Descartes exists, and he is a thing that thinks. What is a thing that thinks? It is a thing which doubts, understands, conceives, affirms, denies, wills, refuses, which also imagines and feels. Ninth paragraph. He provided a list of thoughts that he, the thinking thing, is capable of doing. Rene Descartes referred to anything marked by awareness or consciousness. This does just not include reasoning or other such intellectual activities, but also imagining, sensing, and believing. He realized that these acts are inseparable from him, and just as certainly known as his existence. 10th paragraph. He felt compelled to believe in the existence of sensible objects. Rene Descartes decided to relax his control and let his mind off its short leash just this once and see where it goes. He saw clearly how the case stand. His mind loves to wander and cannot yet suffer itself to be retained within the just limits of truth. He let once more give it the freest rein so that when afterwards is the proper occasion for pulling up, it may the more easily be regulated and controlled. 11 and 12 paragraphs. He reflected on the nature of physical, sensible objects. Rene Descartes concentrated on the process of change by which a piece of wax melted into a liquid wax. The senses seem to tell us things about the world, and he admitted that what we know about the piece of wax, we know through the senses. He stated that our senses allow us to know about the piece of wax, its color, shape, size, smell, and taste. When a piece of wax approached the fire, it melted. Thus, its properties change as well. However, the same wax remains. The senses can inform us about the liquid wax, but cannot tell us that the liquid wax and the piece of wax are one and the same. He concluded that the reality of wax is its extension and nothing else, that this extension knew by intellect rather than the senses, and that the mind is better than anything else. 13th paragraph. His mind would still be likely to make errors. Rene Descartes was greatly astonished when he considered the great feebleness of mind and its proneness to fall insensibly into error, for although without giving expression to his thought, he considered all this in his own mind, words often impede him, and he was at most deceived by the terms of ordinary language. 14th paragraph. After reflecting on his sensible experiences with it, he knew the wax. Rene Descartes said that these sensible experiences were far from being clear and distinct knowledge. His present conception is clearer now that he had most carefully examined what it is, and in what way it can be known. it is certain that although some error may still be found in his judgment, he can nevertheless not perceive it thus without a human mind. 15th paragraph. His own existence as a mind is better known than the existence of the wax. What is true of the wax is true of every object external to his mind. Rene Descartes said that what he had here remarked of wax may be applied to all other things which are external to him, and which are met with outside of him. And further, if the notion of perception of wax has seemed to him clearer and more distinct, not only after the sight or the touch, but also after many other causes have rendered it quite manifest to him, the character of the wax share the entire physical world. It is grasped through mind alone, and it is less certainly known than his own existence as a mind. 16th paragraph. There is nothing is easier for me to know than my mind. Rene Descartes came to his point that even Buddhists are not properly speaking known by the senses or by the faculty of imagination, but by the understanding only. And since they are not known from the fact that they are seen or touched, but only because they are understood.
Now you know what's the meaning of therefore I am. Do you?
I wish I really do, but even I doubt it.